Hello, in this video we're going to talk about the expansion pack 2 for Forester from 3D Quakers. This expansion pack is about creating flowering shrubs or plants that have flowers and assign to them different materials according to the selected render engine. In this picture here, I have this landscape covered with some bushes rendered with Octane. If I open the expansion pack interface, I see the different plants that we can create with it. Of course, these require Forester to be installed on the user's machine. And in total, we have 51 shrubs. Now, of course, all of these are procedural, meaning that whenever you create something, you can easily modify it into a new plant or a totally different species. Once the plant is created, we can give it a material according to the selected render engine from this drop-down list. This scene has a landscape object and a multi-cloner which has two different plants which are modified versions of this first plant here. If I go to my Octane Live Viewer and render the scene, I see the result that I have here. If I zoom in, I see the detail of the material. In the case of Octane, the material, for example, for the leaves is comprised of a mixed material containing a diffuse material and a glossy material. You can change the specular values and you can change the bump amount, since now we have the image texture instead of the Cinema 4D texture added, and this will give you the option to change the bump amount. So we're going to create some plants from the Forester expansion pack 2 and see how they render in Octane. So I'll delete what I have already here and I'll insert a new plant to the scene. For example, I'm going to insert this one here. I'm going to turn off the landscape temporarily and I'm going to add a material to the selected plant. And the Octane materials will be created one by one. If I don't want to have the old materials, because in my case I deleted the old plants, I can click on Remove Unused Materials. Let's render this with the live viewer. If we turn against the sun, we see the subsurface scattering happening. Now let's say that I want to increase the specular amount. All I have to do is go to my glossy material, go to the specular value and increase the float value to whatever amount you want. To increase the bump, you go to the bump channel and increase the power. This is the landscape object that will render, but here we have a scatter distribution object, which is a slightly lower resolution object onto which we're gonna distribute our clones. This does not render, so we're only gonna use it for distribution. So we're gonna add a multi-cloner and we're gonna put the plant inside the multi-cloner, and let's open the live viewer now. We now need to feed the multi-cloner with the distribution geometry, and there it is. By default we have 100 clones, so we're gonna reduce the size first, zoom out a little bit, and we're gonna increase the clone count, say to 1000. Now notice that the clones in the viewport do not show, which keeps the viewport very lightweight, and the clones render properly in the Octane Live Viewer. This is using the latest version of Forester with Cinema 4D multi-instances. Let's see how far we can go with the clone count. So we're gonna reduce the size of the clone even further, for example 0.2, and increase the clone count to 10,000, and right away we see that everything updates inside the live viewer. It's best to deselect the multi-cloner so that the viewport remains very fast and keep the clones rendering in the live viewer window. I'm gonna increase the turbolize size so that not all the clones have the same size. Okay, this is good, but we see that all the plants are the same. So let's change the species. For this, you can duplicate the plant over here and go to the expansion pack 2 and choose modify selected plant and choose one of the other plants. For example, I'm going to choose this one and add material to selected plant. If we turn off the multi-cloner, we can actually see the other plant. So let's move it to the side. There's the other one, and I'm gonna duplicate it again and I'll replace it with say this one here, and I'll add materials to that as well. Let's say that you want to have some grass. To have grass, this plant here contains a grass material, so I'm gonna duplicate that and I'll go to the Forester properties under multiflora. What I'm gonna do here is change from the multiflora library into a grass object. To do that, I'm gonna uncheck change materials because I already have the proper materials, and I'll choose something like this. So now we have just grass along with 3 other plants. If we turn the multi-cloner back on and render, we're gonna get all these plants scattered across the landscape. Now let's say that I want to have a regional distribution, which means that every region is gonna have a different species. For that, you select the multi-cloner. When I change to linear distribution, I see that all the plants are displayed in a linear way. If I want to change the turbulence of that distribution, which I do, I increase the turbulence distribution, and I'm going to increase the turbulence scale from 10 in this case, say to 100, and now I'm going to get a beautiful distribution of these plants over my landscape. So this is how I use the expansion pack 2 from Forester with Octane.